They were icons, legends, larger than life, and then, suddenly, gone. One moment, the world worshipped them. The next, breaking news flashed across screens. A car crash, an overdose, a sudden collapse. Their death sent shockwaves through Hollywood and left fans devastated. But what if the story didn't end there? What if those untimely deaths weren't accidents, but escapes? In a town where illusion is the ultimate currency, is it really so hard to believe that some of its brightest stars pulled off the greatest illusion of all? Tonight, we peel back the curtain on 20 Hollywood actors whose deaths have been questioned, doubted, and endlessly debated. 1. James Dean, the rebel who may have never died, approximately 250 words. On September 30th, 1955, James Dean, the smoldering icon of Rebel Without a Cause, slammed his Porsche 550 Spyder into another car on a California highway. He was just 24 years old. The crash was violent, the damage total. Officially, Dean was pronounced dead on arrival. But almost immediately, the story of his death began to crack around the edges. The wreckage of his Porsche was shrouded in eerie rumors. Mechanics who tried to salvage parts from the car suffered freak accidents. One was killed when the engine fell on him. Another crashed while driving with one of Dean's tires. The car became known as the Little Bastard, cursed, some said, by Dean himself. But there was something even stranger. Dean's body was supposedly mangled beyond recognition, yet no public photographs were ever released. The funeral was closed casket. There were whispers that the body shown to authorities didn't match Dean's size or features, and some fans swore they saw him in Europe, in South America, years later. Adding fuel to the fire, a confidential report surfaced in the 70s suggesting Dean had ties to military intelligence and may have been used in a covert identity relocation program. Far-fetched? Perhaps. But even friends close to Dean admitted he was obsessed with death, with mystique, with the idea of disappearing before his image faded. Was James Dean really killed in that wreck? Or did the ultimate rebel stage the final act in a life built on defying the rules? 2. Marilyn Monroe, a star silenced or strategically erased. Approx 270 words. The world stopped on August 5th, 1962. Marilyn Monroe, the ultimate sex symbol, was found dead in her Los Angeles home, reportedly from an overdose of barbiturates. She was just 36. The official story: suicide. But from the very beginning, something didn't sit right. Her body was discovered by her psychiatrist and housekeeper, but the timeline of their phone calls never quite matched up. Police arrived suspiciously late. Photographs of the scene were withheld, and the coroner's report? Incomplete. Her stomach contained no capsules, even though the dosage was supposedly taken orally. Then came the political entanglements. By 1962, Monroe was entangled with both John F. Kennedy and his brother Robert, America's most powerful men. Rumors exploded that she knew too much, that she had threatened to go public, that she had recorded phone calls and kept a diary full of secrets that never resurfaced. What if Marilyn hadn't died, but had been quietly removed? Some theorists claim she was smuggled out under government orders, her death staged to prevent scandal at the highest level. Others say she had grown tired of being a public plaything, and with the help of powerful allies, faked her death and vanished into obscurity, perhaps in South America. In the years that followed, there were sightings: a blonde woman in Mexico, a former actress seen living under a new name, even whispers from Hollywood insiders suggesting Monroe had once confided, "I want out. I want to disappear." Did the brightest star of Hollywood's golden age really burn out, or did she finally slip free from the spotlight? Brush 3. Bruce Lee, the dragon that never truly died. Approx. Bruce Lee wasn't just a movie star. He was a force of nature, a martial arts legend, a philosopher, and a cultural disruptor who broke racial boundaries in Hollywood. On July 20th, 1973, he was found unresponsive in a Hong Kong apartment. Official cause: cerebral edema. He was just 32. But here's the strange part. The timeline of his final hours was inconsistent. Initial reports contradicted one another. His body was allegedly moved before police arrived. And most baffling of all, no one could explain the sudden swelling of his brain. The woman he was with, Taiwanese actress Betty Ting Pei, gave differing versions of what happened. Some believed the Chinese triads had marked Lee for death after he revealed too many ancient martial arts secrets in the West. Others insisted his ties to the occult had cursed him. But there's another, far darker theory. What if Bruce Lee never died at all? There were whispers that Bruce, overwhelmed by the crushing expectations of fame, orchestrated an exit. A few insiders claimed he was seen boarding a private jet in the days before his death, possibly to the Philippines. A photo allegedly showing Bruce with a beard and sunglasses appeared in an underground magazine a year later. The man bore an uncanny resemblance. Conspiracy theorists believe he staged his own demise to escape the politics of fame, studio control, and the weight of being a global icon. Did Bruce Lee's light extinguish, or did he, like a true warrior, slip into the shadows, undefeated? Maxa 4. Brandon Lee, The Cursed Legacy or the Perfect Disappearance, approx. 270 words. March 31st, 1993. Hollywood was shaken once again. Brandon Lee, son of Bruce Lee, had died on the set of The Crow. A prop gun had accidentally fired a real bullet during filming, striking Lee in the abdomen. He died hours later. He was just 28. The official explanation: a freak accident. A blank cartridge, a lodged bullet, and a tragic oversight. But the deeper you look, the stranger it becomes. Why wasn't the prop gun properly checked? Why did the camera crew conveniently walk off the set before the scene? And why was the very footage of the fatal moment mysteriously lost and never shown to authorities? Some believe Brandon's death was the result of a curse, the same one that allegedly haunted his father. Others whisper of darker forces, organized crime, secret societies, even Hollywood elites who saw the rising star as a threat. And then there's the most chilling theory. Brandon Lee faked his death, following in his father's footsteps. Supporters of this theory point to a disturbing detail. In The Crow, Brandon's character is literally resurrected from the dead. Was it art imitating life, or life hiding behind art? Fans have claimed sightings of him in Canada, the UK, even Asia, living under a new identity, having shed the weight of a cursed bloodline. The Lee family was always shrouded in mystery, and Brandon, like his father, died far too young, or so we're told. Did Brandon Lee fall victim to Hollywood's darkest accident, or did he escape a legacy that had already buried him alive? Number 5. River Phoenix, the boy who vanished into legend. Approx. 270 words. October 31st, 1993, Halloween night outside the Viper Room in Los Angeles. River Phoenix, the gifted young actor with the soul of a poet, collapsed on the sidewalk and began convulsing. He was rushed to the hospital, but pronounced dead at just 23. Cause: a lethal cocktail of heroin and cocaine. But almost immediately, something felt wrong. No one had seen him take drugs that night. His autopsy was delayed. The club mysteriously closed for weeks. And most curious of all, his body was cremated within 24 hours, denying fans and family a final viewing. Why the rush? Some believed River was overwhelmed, not just by fame, but by a deep disillusionment with Hollywood's toxicity. He was notoriously private, avoiding interviews and craving anonymity. And he once hinted that if the pressure got too great, he'd disappear into the woods and never come back. Conspiracy theorists took that literally. In the months and years after his death, there were unconfirmed sightings of a man who looked exactly like River in Costa Rica, Oregon, and even Northern California. A barefoot, long-haired man who played guitar but never gave his name. Others believe Johnny Depp, co-owner of the Viper Room and present that night, helped cover up the truth, perhaps protecting a friend who had faked his death for peace. River Phoenix's death devastated a generation, but the gaps in the story continue to feed rumors. Was he just another young soul lost to excess, or did he walk away from the flames of fame before they consumed him? Top 6. Heath Ledger, the Joker who vanished behind the mask, on 280 words. January 22nd, 2008. Heath Ledger was found unconscious in his New York apartment, face down on the floor, prescription pills scattered nearby. He was just 28. The world mourned. And The Dark Knight, which would become his most iconic performance, had yet to be released. The official cause of death? An accidental overdose of sleeping pills, anti-anxiety medication, and painkillers. But questions arose almost immediately. Heath was reportedly in good spirits days earlier. He had projects lined up. He was spending time with his young daughter. And those close to him insisted he wasn't suicidal, just exhausted. Then there were the eerie coincidences. In an interview just before his death, Ledger confessed that playing the Joker had pushed him into a dark psychological space. He couldn't sleep. He was losing himself. But was this a breakdown or groundwork for the ultimate act? Some believe Heath Ledger staged his death as a masterstroke of performance art, possibly influenced by Andy Kaufman, a fellow actor known for blurring the lines between reality and illusion. Fans point to the mystery man who attended his own memorial, hooded, silent, never identified. And years later, sightings of someone nearly identical to Ledger emerged in remote areas of Australia. Even stranger, his performance in the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus, released posthumously, involved a character who changes identities and disappears through mirrors. Was it coincidence or prophecy? To many, Heath Ledger died too soon, a casualty of artistic obsession. But for some, the possibility lingers. Did the Joker have the last laugh by slipping into myth while the world watched a staged tragedy? Paul Walker, Fast, Furious, and Gone Too Cleanly, approximate 280 words. On November 30th, 2013, Paul Walker, beloved star of the Fast and Furious franchise, died in a fiery car crash in Santa Clarita, California. The Porsche Carrera GT he was riding in lost control, struck a light pole, and burst into flames. Walker, 40, was declared dead at the scene. But the aftermath raised more questions than answers. The crash occurred during a charity event, in broad daylight, in a familiar neighborhood. And yet, no clear footage of the accident ever surfaced. Eyewitnesses gave inconsistent accounts. The autopsy listed his cause of death as combined traumatic and thermal injuries, yet the body was burned beyond recognition. Even stranger, the speed of cremation. Like River Phoenix and others on this list, Walker's remains were quickly handled with no public viewing. And then came the sightings. Weeks after his death, fans swore they spotted him in remote beach towns, in South America, in the Philippines. A man with the same walk, the same voice, captured in blurry cell phone footage. Conspiracy theorists claimed the crash was staged, that Walker, disillusioned with fame and protective of his daughter, had chosen to vanish. Adding fuel to the theory, Paul was deeply involved in humanitarian work. He had begun distancing himself from Hollywood. He spoke often about wanting a simpler life, away from the cameras. And with his Fast and Furious character already known for disappearing and returning from the dead, some saw life imitating fiction once again. Was the crash just a tragic accident? Or did Paul Walker, like his character Brian O'Connor, ride off into the sunset, leaving only burning rubber behind? Knock 8. Steve McQueen, the King of Cool's final great escape, approx 270 words. Steve McQueen, the rugged anti-hero of films like Bullet, The Great Escape, and Papillon, was the epitome of 1960s cool. But by the late 1970s, his health was crumbling. He had been diagnosed with mesothelioma, a rare, aggressive cancer. And in November 1980, he was pronounced dead in a small clinic in Juarez, Mexico, after undergoing experimental surgery. He was 50. But Hollywood whispered something else entirely. Why was a man of McQueen's wealth and fame seeking surgery in a low-profile Mexican clinic under an alias? Why was he there without any major American doctors or public handlers? And why were there no clear images of the body released to the press? Some believed he was desperate, willing to try anything. Others believed he had engineered the ultimate disappearance. At the time of his death, McQueen had reportedly grown paranoid, withdrawn, and tired of being followed. He had begun studying Christianity, talking about vanishing from public life, and even reportedly made cryptic remarks about disappearing to somewhere quiet. Then came the stories. A man matching McQueen's distinctive look, grizzled, quiet, motorcycle-loving, was spotted across South America and the southwestern United States throughout the 80s and 90s. Always alone, always evading questions. Could it be that Steve McQueen, the master of escape on screen, performed one final jailbreak, this time from fame itself? Did the King of Cool go out on his own terms, or did he simply ride off into the desert and never look back? Kipash 9. Natalie Wood, the drowning that never quite made sense. Approximate 280 words. On the night of November 29, 1981, Natalie Wood, the luminous star of West Side Story and Rebel Without a Cause, vanished from her yacht, Splendor, off the coast of Catalina Island. Hours later, her body was found floating in the water, clad in a flannel nightgown and red jacket. She was 43. The official cause of death, accidental drowning. But few bought the story, and the case has haunted Hollywood ever since. She was on board with her husband, Robert Wagner, and actor Christopher Walken. They all told different versions of what happened. Wagner waited hours to call the Coast Guard, and the yacht's captain, Dennis Davern, later claimed Wagner was furious that night and may have pushed Natalie during an argument. The case was reopened in 2011. Wagner was named a person of interest. But to this day, no one has been charged, and here's where the conspiracy deepens. Some believe Natalie never drowned at all. Witnesses reported a woman matching her description boarding a smaller boat late that night. Others claim to have seen her in Baja California in the early 80s, pale, cloaked, silent. Why? Perhaps to escape a toxic marriage, a career in decline, or the trauma of Hollywood itself. A diary entry, recovered after her death, chillingly read, "Sometimes I think about starting over, somewhere no one knows me." A body was found, but details were murky. No definitive evidence ever surfaced. And the sea, as always, kept its secrets. Did Natalie Wood fall victim to a tragic accident? Or was her final act the ultimate vanishing from a world that never gave her peace? 10. Sal Mineo, murdered in the dark or escaped from a doomed fate. 280 words. Sal Mineo was once Hollywood's golden boy, Oscar-nominated at 17 for Rebel Without a Cause, co-starring with James Dean. But by the 1970s, he had faded from the spotlight. On February 12, 1976, as he returned home from a theater rehearsal in West Hollywood, he was stabbed in an alley behind his apartment building. He died on the pavement at age 37. The killing was sudden, brutal, and, according to initial reports, senseless. He wasn't robbed, he had no known enemies. And the only eyewitness couldn't give a reliable description. The case went cold for nearly 2 years. Eventually, a man named Lionel Williams, a career criminal with no known connection to Mineo, was convicted. But even during the trial, many doubted the story. The motive was unclear, the evidence circumstantial, and friends of Mineo questioned whether he was even targeted at all. Then the rumors started. Some believed Sal, frustrated with the industry's treatment of openly gay actors, faked his death to escape blacklisting and threats. He had spoken about starting a new life abroad, particularly in Europe, where he felt freer. One cryptic letter, reportedly sent to a friend days before his death, read, "You may not hear from me for a while, but know that I'm finally doing something for me." A few years later, a man with Mineo's distinctive look and voice was spotted in Rome, working under a pseudonym in fringe theater. Was Sal Mineo truly stabbed in a dark alley by a stranger? Or did he, like his old friend James Dean, stage a quiet rebellion and vanish into legend? 11. Jean Harlow, the platinum blonde with a mysterious 270 words. In the 1930s, Jean Harlow reigned as Hollywood's original bombshell, the blonde bombshell of the silver screen. Her electric presence, seductive charm, and fragile vulnerability made her both adored and exploited. But in 1937, at the peak of her fame, she suddenly fell ill during the filming of Saratoga. 9 days later, at just 26 years old, she was pronounced dead. The cause? Acute kidney failure. Or so we're told. What troubled fans and journalists alike was the secrecy surrounding her final hours. Studios downplayed her illness. Doctors gave conflicting reports. Even her own mother, who managed every aspect of her life, refused an autopsy. Her funeral was closed casket, and photographs of her corpse were tightly controlled by MGM. The rumors began almost immediately. Some insiders believed Harlow's mother, a strict follower of Christian Science, had denied her daughter proper medical treatment, leading to her death. Others suggested something far darker, that the studio faked her death to cover up a scandal, a pregnancy, or even a breakdown. But a stranger theory took hold in fan circles. Jean Harlow never died. According to gossip columns of the era, a woman bearing Harlow's exact appearance was spotted in Switzerland 2 years later, living under a new name. A mysterious blonde American reportedly living in luxury, keeping to herself, fluent in French, but with an unmistakable Hollywood lilt. Could MGM have orchestrated a quiet exit for one of its most valuable stars before she spiraled out of control? Did Jean Harlow truly succumb to illness at 26? Or was her disappearance the most carefully staged scene of her career? 12. Carole Lombard, the star who crashed or escaped into silence, approximate 280 words. Carole Lombard was Hollywood royalty, The dazzling, quick-witted actress who stole hearts in screwball comedies and in real life as the beloved wife of Clark Gable. But her story came to a sudden, shattering end on January 16, 1942. After completing a war bond tour, Lombard boarded TWA Flight 3 to return to Los Angeles. The plane crashed into Potosi Mountain in Nevada, killing all 22 people on board. Her death at age 33 stunned the nation and devastated Gable, who never fully recovered. But some aspects of the crash were strange. The aircraft veered far off course, no distress signals were sent, and the site of the wreckage was cordoned off by military personnel before reporters could arrive. The remains were reportedly unrecognizable, and Lombard's body was identified only by a necklace. Conspiracy theorists seized on these details. At the time, World War II paranoia was high. Some whispered that Lombard had been working with intelligence agencies, using her star power to move between borders. Others claimed she had been targeted, or that she had volunteered to disappear, assuming a new identity as part of a covert mission. In the decades that followed, isolated rumors persisted that an elegant, American-accented woman lived in South America, fluent in Spanish but never speaking of her past. Some claimed to have met her, always older, blonde, poised, and curiously familiar. Was Carole Lombard lost in a tragic accident, or did the star who so effortlessly played reinvention pull off one final transformation? 13. Thelma Todd, The Ice Cream Blonde and the Garage of Secrets, approx 280 words. Thelma Todd was one of the brightest comedic stars of early Hollywood, sharp, glamorous, and disarmingly modern. But on the morning of December 16, 1935, she was found slumped over in the front seat of her Lincoln convertible, parked in the garage of her business partner's ex-wife. Cause of death: carbon monoxide poisoning. She was only 29. The LAPD ruled it an accident. Maybe she'd just fallen asleep in the car after a night out, but almost no one believed that. The location was odd. Several blocks uphill from her home, in a locked garage, she was dressed to go out, not to rest. Her nose was broken, her lips were bruised, and according to some reports, there was blood on her clothing. Strangest of all, she was seen alive hours after the time she was said to have died, laughing and chatting at a party. And the web of suspects? Almost cinematic. Todd was caught in a triangle between powerful men. Her business partner Roland West, her ex-husband Pat DiCicco, a man tied to the mob, and studio fixers who didn't want a scandal. She also ran a successful restaurant that drew Hollywood elite and, allegedly, the attention of organized crime. When the studio closed ranks and the coroner ruled it accidental, rumors ignited. What if Thelma Todd's death had been faked, to protect her, or to let her escape? Some claimed she had been threatened, and that her death was a cover for an arranged disappearance. In later years, sightings of a woman matching her description circulated, living quietly under a new name in coastal Oregon. Did Thelma Todd fall victim to a Hollywood hit? Or did she slip through the cracks of corruption and write her own ending? Top 14. George Reeves, Superman's Death or Disguise, approx 280 words. June 16, 1959. George Reeves, the man who brought Superman to life on television, was found dead in his Beverly Hills home from a single gunshot wound to the head. He was just 45. The official report said suicide. But the story? A tangled web of contradictions. Reeves was discovered naked in his bedroom. A Luger pistol lay at his feet. No fingerprints were found on the weapon. His fiancée, house guests, and friends were in the home at the time, yet claimed to hear nothing. Even more bizarre, multiple bullet holes were found in the room, but only one in Reeves himself. Why would a man at the peak of recognition, preparing for a film comeback and planning a wedding, take his own life? That's where the conspiracy begins. Some believe Reeves was murdered, a victim of his love affair with Toni Mannix, wife of MGM's notorious fixer, Eddie Mannix. Others suggest he was eliminated for threatening to expose secrets inside the studio system. But then, there's a wilder idea. What if George Reeves didn't die at all? There were whispers that Reeves had grown weary of being typecast, that he felt trapped by the Superman image. He told friends he wanted to escape for good. And in the weeks before his death, he behaved oddly, giving away belongings, canceling commitments, and speaking cryptically about a new chapter. Over the years, stories emerged. A tall older man with a square jaw living in rural Canada, keeping to himself. A voice like Reeves. A life erased and rebuilt. Did George Reeves meet a violent end, or did Superman trade his cape for a quiet, anonymous life? 15. David Carradine, Death in Bangkok, or A Vanishing Act Gone Wrong. Approx 280 words, June 3rd, 2009. David Carradine, martial arts icon, star of Kung Fu and Kill Bill, was found dead in a Bangkok hotel room. The circumstances were as strange as they were disturbing. Carradine was discovered hanging in a closet with cords tied around his neck, wrists, and genitals. Thai police labeled it accidental death due to autoerotic asphyxiation, but his family rejected that claim forcefully. They hired a private investigator. Theories of foul play flooded the press. Here's where it gets darker. Carradine had been working on a film at the time and reportedly investigating secret societies and underground sex rings for a documentary project. Some believe he got too close to something dangerous. Others say he was being followed in Bangkok. And according to reports, surveillance footage from the hotel vanished before investigators could review it. But then, a strange question emerged. Was it even Carradine who died? Witnesses never saw the body. The face was reportedly bruised beyond recognition, and the cremation was handled swiftly, with little transparency. To some, it all felt staged. A perfect cover, whether for a silencing or for a voluntary disappearance. Carradine had spoken in interviews about wanting to escape Hollywood. He lamented the roles he was being offered. He hinted he was tired of playing the monk, the killer, the outcast. In one eerie quote, he said, "I've died so many times on screen. One day I might just disappear for real." Did David Carradine fall into darkness in a Bangkok hotel? Or did he orchestrate his own exit from a world that never stopped casting him? 16. Peter Finch, A Death Too Timely to Be True? Approx 270 words. January 14, 1977. Peter Finch, the acclaimed British-Australian actor and star of Network, died of a heart attack in the lobby of the Beverly Hills Hotel. He was 60. Just hours before, he had completed a high-profile interview about his breakout role as the unhinged news anchor Howard Beale. The irony? His character famously screams, "I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore." Finch was widely expected to win the Academy Award that year, and he did, posthumously, becoming the first actor to win a post-death Oscar. The industry mourned. The timing, they said, was poetic, even theatrical. But was it too theatrical? Witnesses at the hotel reported Finch acting strangely before the collapse, as if performing. One waiter swore he heard Finch mutter, "It's done. Finally." The coroner's report listed myocardial infarction, but there were no prior signs of heart trouble. And strangely, Finch had told a friend days before, "If I die this week, don't believe it." Then came the rumors. Some in the British press claimed a man matching Finch's description was seen in southern France months later, alive, bearded, going by a different name. Others claimed Finch had long resented the machinery of Hollywood and was quietly planning a way out. What better time to vanish than on the eve of your greatest triumph, leaving the world applauding as you disappear? Did Peter Finch truly collapse at the height of his fame, or was it his final performance, executed with award-winning precision? 17. Veronica Lake, Hollywood's peekaboo girl who slipped through the cracks. Approx 270 words. In the 1940s, Veronica Lake was one of the most recognizable faces in the world. Her signature peekaboo hairstyle and sultry screen presence made her an icon. She starred alongside the biggest names in film noir, exuding mystery both on and off screen. But by the 1950s, she had all but disappeared. The official narrative was one of tragic decline. Lake's career was derailed by alcoholism, mental health struggles, and clashes with studios. She was reportedly working as a cocktail waitress in New York by the early 1960s, a former star reduced to obscurity. In 1973, she died of hepatitis and kidney failure in Vermont. She was just 50. But the end of Veronica Lake's story is riddled with peculiarities. There was no public funeral. Her death certificate listed minimal personal information, and no one ever saw a body. Her ashes were supposedly scattered. But in the years that followed, no official record of cremation surfaced. Friends reported she had recently spoken about reinvention, about leaving the past behind. One even quoted her as saying, "If the world has forgotten me, maybe I can finally live." Years later, in the south of France, journalists claim to have encountered a woman with hauntingly familiar features, reclusive, eloquent, with a distinct Hollywood accent. She was known to locals only as Vera. Could Veronica Lake, the ultimate enigma of the silver screen, have staged her own fade-out? Did she really die in lonely obscurity? Or did she do what she always did best, vanish behind a veil of glamour and shadows? 18. Dorothy Dandridge, the beauty silenced too soon or hidden by design? Approx. 280 words. Dorothy Dandridge broke barriers as the first African-American woman nominated for a Best Actress Oscar, stunning audiences in Carmen Jones, 1954. She was elegant, powerful, and fearless, but Hollywood didn't know what to do with her. Typecast, underpaid, and relentlessly scrutinized, her once promising career spiraled. On September 8, 1965, she was found dead in her Los Angeles apartment. She was just 42. The official cause of death was listed as an accidental overdose of antidepressants. But confusion reigned. One coroner said it was a blood clot. Another said the drugs did it. The timeline of her discovery was murky, the autopsy inconclusive, and as with others on this list, there were no publicly released photos of the body. Friends were baffled. Dorothy had just booked new work. She was upbeat in recent interviews, and she had reportedly been planning to move abroad to relaunch her career. One insider claimed she had mentioned disappearing for a while, maybe permanently. Then, as always, the sightings began. In the late 60s, a French journalist swore he saw Dandridge in Marseille under a different name. A woman with her precise posture and eyes, elegant, refined, cautious. In the 70s, rumors placed her in Casablanca, working in education. The stories were brushed off, but they never quite stopped. Why would she fake her death? Some say to escape the crushing racism of the industry. Others believe she was forced into hiding by political or financial threats. Did Dorothy Dandridge truly die in silence? Or did she choose at last to take control of a life that Hollywood never let her own? 19. Philip Seymour Hoffman, the genius who may have scripted his own exit. Approx. 280 words. On February 2, 2010, Philip Seymour Hoffman, one of the most respected actors of his generation, was found dead on the bathroom floor of his New York apartment. A syringe in his arm, dozens of heroin bags nearby. He was 46. The autopsy ruled it an accidental overdose. It was a heartbreaking shock. Hoffman had been sober for over 2 decades before reportedly relapsing just months earlier. He had just wrapped filming on The Hunger Games: Mockingjay and was scheduled to direct a new project. Friends described him as tired but creatively driven, not suicidal. But some details didn't make sense. The heroin bags in his apartment were uncut, unusually pure and deadly, almost too clean. His phone records, movements, and final communications remained partially sealed. And strangely, the NYPD didn't release full toxicology documentation to the public, sparking quiet speculation. And then, as always, came the murmurs. Hoffman was a man of deep complexity. He often spoke about the thin line between performance and identity, how art could be a form of escape. He once said in an interview, "If I weren't acting, I'd vanish." Some believe he meant it literally. A few months after his death, an indie filmmaker claimed to have seen Hoffman in Prague, in disguise, watching an experimental play. Another claimed a man resembling Hoffman had auditioned under a different name at a small theater in New Zealand. Nothing was confirmed, but the possibility lingered. Could the master of transformation have pulled off the ultimate vanishing act? Did Philip Seymour Hoffman truly succumb to his demons? Or did the actor who disappeared into every role finally disappear into a new life? Hot 20. Anton Yelchin, a freak accident or a vanishing hidden in plain sight? Approximately 280 words. June 19th, 2016. Anton Yelchin, the Russian-born prodigy best known for his role as Chekhov in the rebooted Star Trek franchise, was found dead in his driveway. His Jeep had rolled backward, pinning him against a brick pillar and security gate. He was 27. The death was ruled a freak accident, but for many, that explanation never sat right. Anton was cautious, disciplined, and methodical. The Jeep model he drove had been recalled for a gearshift defect, but he hadn't yet taken it in for service. The exact mechanics of the accident were vague. There were no witnesses, no surveillance footage, and Yelchin's body wasn't discovered for hours, despite his being expected on set. Adding to the mystery, Anton was extremely private. He had grown disillusioned with Hollywood despite his success. In interviews, he spoke of identity, of alienation, of wanting a quieter kind of life. He was a photographer, a poet, and a critic of the industry, someone who never seemed quite comfortable with fame. Then came the theories. Was the accident staged? Could he have been silenced over something he knew, or simply engineered his own exit? One former friend told a European tabloid that Anton had spoken cryptically about disappearing for a while, just months before his death. Another source insisted the actor had started moving funds and properties under aliases. And in early 2018, a French indie actress swore she had shared a drink with a man calling himself Alexei in the south of France. Quiet, reclusive, with eyes she would never forget. Did Anton Yelchin truly die crushed by metal? Or was that the final curtain on a man who quietly walked away from a life he never asked for? You've now reached the end of the 20-part script.